don't know a lot about Frank, and the only thing I know for sure is that he's been in Toastmasters a long time. He's incredible. He's an amazing Superman. He does everything. At this time, please welcome Mr. Frank Lewis to the stage.
Will, you inspired me. What an amazing man. Forgiveness. What do you think of when you hear the word forgiveness? Chris? Relief, release. Linda, what do you think of when you hear the word forgiveness? Happiness. How about you, Jen? The word forgiveness, what comes to mind? What's the first emotion that comes to you?
Peace.
Peace. The Bible uses forgiveness 75 times throughout. When I think of the word forgiveness, I think the same thing. There's that peace. There's this happiness that comes along with the thought about forgiveness. And do we do enough? Every person in this room has got somebody in our life where we need to ask for some kind of forgiveness or to forgive them. A grade school teacher wanted to demonstrate the value of forgiveness. And on Monday, she had all of her students bring in a bag, and in that bag, they were to draw potatoes of everybody in their life that they had not forgiven. And they were to write the name of that person on the potato. Some of the kids only had one or two or no potatoes in their bag. Some of the kids had many, many, many potatoes. The kids that had been bullying them, maybe their parents, others in their life, and their job was to carry these potatoes around with them in the bag for the rest of the week until Friday. Now, as the week drew on, those kids that maybe had one potato, their load was pretty light. Those kids that had 10, 15 potatoes in their bag, that load got real heavy. Not only that did they get heavy, but by Friday those potatoes began to rot and smell and stink and turn black. The lesson learned there was it's the same thing that we do when we carry the lack of forgiveness in our lives. It becomes heavy and it begins to stink. And what are the consequences of that throughout our day, throughout our life, of not forgiving? It actually becomes unhealthy. It's often been said that if we can't forgive somebody else, it's like taking poison and hoping that the other person dies. That's the lack of forgiveness. My business partner in Dallas, Texas, had a very, very best friend. Actually saved the man's life. And they had a business dealing, and the friend basically cheated, lied, and took him for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and never once apologized for what he did to my friend Charlie. For 5 years, Charlie seemed to develop all types of illnesses, ulcers, his leg hurt, his back hurt, his eyesight. And finally he had a conversation with somebody he really trusted and said, you know what you've got to do here, friend, you've got to let it go. You need to forgive what he's done to you. And almost instantaneously, the backache, the eye problems, the illnesses, and the ulcers went away. This is a story that I love to share because it's about what I call little Eva. When I left home when I was about 15 years old, the mother of this household of about 6 kids, including me, we basically lived in an adobe hut. Dirt floors, a wood stove, and a pitcher pump. And this woman was so peaceful and so forgiving with all of these kids that came into her life. And one summer her sister came in from California. And I said, how is it that Eva could be so calm? Why does she forgive everybody and she gets abused every day? She told me the story that during the Great Depression, her family lived in a boxcar in Winslow, Arizona. That's how poor they were. And the father had no work, but there was an opportunity for a job in New Mexico. So he left little Eva with his mother, the grandmother. This upset Eva, I guess, because she began to wet the bed. And every time Eva would wet the bed, the grandmother would whip her. It got so bad that the grandmother, no matter how cold it was outside, put little Eva out there on the porch with the dogs in the wintertime to try to break her from wetting her bed. Well, eventually, the husband, the dad found working, came back, got the daughter, and left the mother there. About 5 years later, the grandmother developed a stroke and came to live with Eva's family. You know who her caretaker was? It was Eva. Eva nursed this old woman, changed her diapers, wiped her head, fed her, and nurtured her until the day this old woman died. That's the perfect example of forgiveness. And I asked Eva about this story, and I said, "Why could you could have been mean to this woman. You could have paid her back. How could you not do that?" She said, "The thought never even crossed my mind." I'm thinking, wow, that is amazing. So how do we begin to forgive people? First thing we need to do, this may sound simple, we need to acknowledge that there's a pain there somewhere. Next thing we need to do is let go of the problem and move on with our life. Sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? But who do we forgive? Well, we can forgive others for what they have done to us. We can ask them to forgive us for things maybe we've done to them. But you know who the most important person in our entire life that needs to be asked forgiveness? Us. We need to let go of our blames on ourselves, what we're doing to ourselves. We need to forgive ourselves. This is a phrase that I have to use very often with my wife when I ask forgiveness. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me.